Apple is rolling out a feature known as Privacy Relay on the new iOS 15, and there is a lot to like about the way that it protects us from a lot of different forms of online tracking, not to mention how it mimics things like VPN and Tor, but it is not a VPN, and it is not Tor. So what is Apple's Privacy Relay? Well, I spent the last couple weeks testing it out, and here's what I found. Welcome to All Things Secure. My name's Josh, and I realize that we just stepped away from a controversy that Apple is dealing with related to their privacy practices and child protection. But I also realize that there are millions upon millions of people that still use Apple products, and they're not going to be throwing them away anytime soon. So these type of features are still going to have value and benefit to those people, including myself, that still use Apple products. And so Privacy Relay is an interesting way to attack this kind of privacy stuff. Now, before I go into how it works and what it looks like, which I'm going to show you my phone screen in just a little bit, I also want to explain a little bit more about privacy, because what we're doing here is we're talking about the who that's accessing the internet and the what. What are we accessing? All right, the who obviously being us, our devices, computer, iPads, whatever, and the what URL we're visiting, what websites, what companies, what things we're looking for online. Now, when these two pieces of information are attached together, companies are able to build profiles on us to understand who we are, what we like, just develop different traits about us. But being able to separate those two pieces of information, the who and the what, that is where privacy begins to have a benefit for us, and being able to separate that information out. So the way that Privacy Relay does this is that when we access the internet through the Safari browser on our phone, on our computer, or whatnot with the Privacy Relay on, it encrypts our data as it heads to Apple's servers, very similar to a VPN. Now, unlike a VPN, you cannot choose which server or which country you want to access the internet from, but that encryption does happen between your computer or your device and Apple's servers. Now, what Apple does is they strip away the IP address that's attached to that information. They can't see what URL you want to go to yet, but they can see your IP address, that who piece. And so they're going to take that away, and then they're going to send that information over to a third party, which in my case, as I've been testing, is Cloudflare. Now, Cloudflare does not know the original IP address. It does not know the who, the me, the my device. However, they're able to decrypt that package and know where it's going, what website I'm visiting. And so they're going to decrypt it. They're going to add an anonymous IP address, because you have to have an IP address, and then it will send it off into the internet. So in the end, you have Apple that knows obviously who you are, but in this case with Privacy Relay on, they're not going to know where you're going. And then you have Cloudflare or some other third party that knows where you want to go, but it doesn't know who you are. It's lost that IP information. So again, we've detached these two to create a better level of privacy. Now, the way that you would do this is you would go into your settings app. I'm going to do that right now. And then on the top, you're going to see your name and iCloud. And you're going to click into iCloud, and you're going to see Privacy Relay about 4 rows down. Now, if you want to turn that on, you're going to notice that there's another level that comes in that says IP address location. This is where you do get one choice of how you want your IP address location to come up. So normally, if I were to look up my IP address, it's going to show my city. It's going to show a lot of information about who and where I am. And let's say I'm in Chicago accessing the internet. If I want to maintain a general location, meaning when I access the internet, I still want Chicago-related searches to come up, I can maintain my general location. However, if I really don't care about that, I can use country and time zone, which is just going to choose a random IP address in the United States and possibly within the central time zone where Chicago's at. Those are the only two options I get, which again makes this very different from a VPN, or at least a commercial VPN, because I don't get to choose which server I'm going into. I can't use this to unblock, geo-block content like Netflix or Disney Plus if I'm outside the US, or BBC iPlayer or anything like that. So I don't have that level of control, which is where this very much differs from a VPN. I think it's a lot more like Tor in that you are dividing information between different nodes. The first node obviously being the Apple servers, and the second node being a third party like Cloudflare. Now, if you notice, when I have this on, when I access the internet and then check my IP address, it's going to show as not being my actual IP address. Obviously, I'm here in Thailand. This is showing that I'm in London. Granted, when we talk about being in the same country, I think as we're beta testing right now, Cloudflare is just giving everyone a London address, but it's supposed to later just give me an address, some sort of IP address in Thailand, since that's where I'm located. Now, what's really interesting is that if I were to access through Firefox, which is the browser that I normally use to access the internet, you're going to see that my IP address is my actual IP address in Thailand. I'm going to blur it out, obviously, but this is my IP address. So what I'm saying here is that all internet traffic does not get encrypted and routed through this privacy relay when you're using privacy relay. Only the stuff that you do through the Safari browser is what gets encrypted and sent through the relay. Now there's pros and cons to this. I've noticed as I've been testing out iOS 15 that a lot of the privacy features, hide my email address being another one, are really only available to those people who use Apple-related apps. So the Mail app or the Safari internet browser. And I prefer to use Firefox. It's just something that I like. And because of that, the privacy relay probably isn't going to be as beneficial to me. Or if I am going to use it, I'll have to make sure that I use Safari anytime that I want to use the privacy relay. Anytime, let's say I'm getting on a public Wi-Fi network, or I'm just wanting to add that extra level of anonymity when I'm accessing the internet. So it's very much like Tor in that way, in that when, a lot of times when you're using Tor, it only works when you're using the Tor browser. Now, it is not available to every person that upgrades to iOS 15. In order to use Privacy Relay, you're going to have to subscribe to some iCloud account, which could be just the standalone iCloud Plus that gives you extra storage for your backups and photos. Or it could be Apple One, which is where you have access to Apple Music, Apple TV, and extra cloud storage. Either way, it is a paid feature, and it's one of those things where it's not like a super accessible feature to turn on and off, and so I can imagine myself turning it on, keeping it on at all times, and then only using the Safari browser when I want that extra level of anonymity, but then going back and using Firefox, for a lot of the rest of the browsing that I might want to do the rest of the time. So almost like an incognito window, except better, obviously, than an incognito window and a lot more private. If you have any questions about Privacy Relay, you can leave them in the comments below. So what do you think? Is Privacy Relay a valuable feature to you? Is this something that you're going to be using once you upgrade to iOS 15? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, comment with any other questions, and subscribe to All Things Secured for more great security and online videos.